Welcome to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast with Darren Mitchell. If you're a sales leader looking to take your leadership to a whole new level, then this is the podcast for you. We'll be exploring tips, techniques, and strategies to help you take your leadership to the exceptional level and allow you to enjoy more money, more meaning, and better sales results. All right, welcome back to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast, and a very special welcome to a man that is coming in from the Northern Hemisphere. He is coming in from Minnesota. It is late evening on a Thursday night. Mr. Joe Davis, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Darren. Thank you. Thank you. It's not that late yet. We're okay. We're okay.
Well, and we were talking before we press record. I've got a lot of guests that come in from North America, and typically we try to schedule it around about late afternoon. And I was really curious to know where you were coming in from because not many people do podcasts at 8:30 at night. At night.
Well, truth be told, I have a lot of grandchildren that are with me in the summer place, Minnesota. And my wife likes me to do first, well, she wants me at dinner and she wants me to help put them to bed. So if I had done 7 o'clock, I would have got in trouble.
Yes.
8:30, okay. 9 would have been better, but that might have been too late for me. So
Right.
that's what motivated this.
So 8:30 is a good medium ground. Love it, love it. So Joe, for the listeners' benefit, you've spent over 37 years in Boston Consulting Group, or as many know it, BCG, global organization, and many years as the managing director and senior partner of that organization. And we're going to talk about all things leadership today. You've also written a book that's been out for over 12 months called The Generous Leader: 7 Ways to Give You of Yourself for Everybody's Gain. We're not going to talk necessarily, well, we can plug the book because it's still selling. And as you said, you're selling a number of copies. But I'm interested in talking about some of the key principles of the book. Now, before I get to that, I'd love it for you to give a bit of background to the listeners in terms of the work you've done at Boston, and your evolving, I guess, career, and what has prompted you to now be an author.
Oh, thank you. You mentioned BCG as much, but my first job was Procter and Gamble as a sales rep, since we're talking about sales leaders
Yeah.
in and out of grocery stores, which was quite an experience, as you might imagine. But I might tell a story if I may, because it also leads to a lot of how I tried to behave at BCG.
Yeah.
2 years into the role, I got promoted to unit manager, we called it, and had 3 sales reps. 2 of them were career guys. One was, manager track also. And the career guys, in my mind, I was 25 years old, 24, I don't remember. They were old guys. No, they were 40. But to me, when you're 25, 40 is an old guy. And I rode with them every 2 weeks. And I remember I was petrified to tell them anything, because who am I, this 25-year-old snot-nosed kid, to
Yeah.
tell someone who's a career sales guy? And it's funny, I remember at the end of the year, I was doing the reviews. I wrote down everything I thought they should have worked on over the course of the year so I started the review with this one guy named Rich. Got in, started going through these items, and Rich says, wait a minute, Joe. I think there are a few swear. Like, what the blank is going on here? You ride with me every 2 weeks, and you've never told me any of this?
Yes.
I'm sure I froze then. And the truth was, I was a 24 or 25-year-old kid who was basically scared. Who am I to tell him how to do his job better? But the thing that was really an interesting lesson, didn't get it in the moment, but even the 40-year-old career guy wanted to learn from his leader. He expected
Yes.
us to share learnings, to share lessons. And surely at 25, I did not understand that and couldn't imagine. I just thought he wanted me out of the way. It was really, and then of course, the other lesson is don't ever write a review annually at the end of the year where you haven't told them the points along the way. That was, my boss said, never again write a review where they haven't heard every word you're going, or every point.
Absolutely.
But that was a very meaningful moment in my beginning of my job career as to what is expected of a leader. And then, I spent 37 years at BCG, as you said. I was co-founded some offices, started the public sector practice, led the West Coast, led the Northeast, and ultimately led BCG North America. So a lot of experiences there. But, throughout it all, I think one thing is, that lesson there, which I didn't think about at the time, but the importance of really making sure you as a leader are growing others, because that's
Mm.
actually how you win at the end of the, I mean, it sounds a little selfish, but how you win at the end of the day. So that inspired me. One of the things that inspired me to write this book is, give back a little bit of my lessons as to what I'd learned over 37 years in leadership. It's funny because I wrote the day I stepped out of the head of North America, I just started writing, and I had 38,000 words written. It takes about 50,000 for a book. And I sent it to Harvard Press, which the beauty of BCG is we have a lot of access.
Mm.
And said she read it. She goes, well, I read it. She might have skimmed it. She goes, very good. I even because it was mostly about COVID because I just led through COVID. She goes, but no book. She goes, the problem is by time this comes out, no one wants to read about COVID. And by the way, buddy, it's all about you, and not many people want to read all about you. Whoever if you're Obama, they'll read all about you or something, or you know what I mean. So she suggested I extend it as far as experiences across my life and I brought in clients to the story. So what triggered the writing it. Some colleagues of mine said you should really share some of your lessons over the years. To be honest with you, writing the book near the end of my career may set up opportunities post my career, to be very
Yep.
honest. But there
Yep.
is something about planning what are you going to do next when you leave someplace like that. But also, I wanted to, well, I said to a friend of mine, it's hard to write a book. It's just lonely and all that. And I said, oh my God, Brian, is this worth it? And he said, Joe, if you can move 8 people to change their management style somewhat, you make a difference. It's worth it.
Yep.
Now I have aspirations beyond just 8 people, but I think at the core, that's what I thought. I thought to myself, Brené Brown, 2 million, millions of books, Malcolm Gladwell, all these people, Rachel. I thought, who am I? But I'll have my 25 people. They might have their million, but we can all touch different.
Well, then you got John Maxwell that sold like something like 32 million copies of his
Yeah, but
book.
no, I mean, that's right. If you think of that, you won't do anything because I had a boss that said, that's a little off point, but I had a colleague, someone was really smart on our team, BCG, and he said, Joe, you're not a smart assignment, but you got to keep trying. I thought, wait, my brain is only what my brain is. How do I keep trying? I can try other things, but I can't really make myself smarter.
Well,
And I
it's
said,
just keep learning and keep evolving
you keep learning, you read and all that, and you
absolutely.
learn, which is what are your own. Sorry, really, I'm rambling here, but what are your own strengths, and how do you tap into those to
Yeah.
ensure
Yeah.
your own success?
Love it. There's a couple of things I want to ask you specifically about the book, but before I do, you mentioned something back at Procter and Gamble that as a 25-year-old leader working with your 40-year-old sales reps and the fact you did the reviews and so forth. I think that's a really profound lesson because even today in 2025, companies that I work in, a lot of the leaders leave the feedback conversation until the 6 month or the full year performance review, and they lose the impact, and in through that process often lose credibility. So, was that something that was like a bit of a not so much a jolt, but a reminder that you know what you need to be always providing feedback, always working with your team, so there's no surprises.
Oh yeah, no, I was blessed for that. He didn't say what the hell. He said, what the blank, if you, he punched me in the face without hitting me. And when he walked out, my boss said, you never write a review. I mean, it was like, look at me right in the eye. It
Yeah,
was, it was a wonderful lesson. And I never forgot. I was embarrassed. I was mortified, which is good because now I
mm,
learned, that was my feedback. Oh, and I'm a huge believer, as you just said, in the moment, whatever fashion you want to do it, be clear, be direct. Now, if someone had a really bad thing, you don't go kick them when they're down. You got to
yeah,
think, but that guy was very clear with me, and my boss was too, and it was the right moment. And if they told me that, well, my boss had said, "Now let me give you a rule." 3 weeks later, he said, "Remember, it wouldn't have been the same." No, no, no. It's a really big deal. That's not just sales, any leaders. And to your point, so often leaders, well, either they don't want to take the time to do it,
yeah,
or what they're afraid to do it, which was my issue, or they don't want, which same as fear, they don't want to be the bad guy. Except if you're not helping somebody grow, that's really the bad guy.
yeah.
That's the real bad guy.
Totally, totally. And so, if you look back on that lesson, was that something that you then took hold, and when you went into BCG, it was really almost one of your founding principles?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you say it like that because I think you evolve and grow without even knowing exactly why you're. I mean, I don't know about you, but if I look
Yeah,
back when I wrote this book, someone said, "Well, why'd you do that?" I said, well, "I don't know." And I had a coach because, "Well, think about why you did it because you can't just put it was intuition in a book. That won't work." Absolutely. And I was known for frank and direct and in the moment feedback. But, I also cared deeply about that person getting better. There was no other reason why I gave
Mm.
feedback. And the minute someone knows you actually care about them getting better, you can misspeak, you can get away with a lot. I mean, you can't be mean, but
Yes.
you, you can be pretty direct, and someone knows, okay, this person's got, my best interests at heart.
It,
That's on the feedback. So can I tell one more story? I don't know.
yeah,
On the feedback,
absolutely.
move on. There was one time a fellow, he was 30 years old. He was on consulting team. And he was presenting to the C-suite, and I was the partner of the team, but he was presenting. He used the word like probably every four words, like he talked like, and it was embarrassing. 12-year-olds say that or 14-year-old. And afterwards, the client left the room. We were debriefing, and I looked up at Alex. I said, Alex, how old are you? He said, I'm 30. He said, 30-year-olds don't say like. Never say like again. And he said he was so embarrassed. He told me that he was so embarrassed in front of the rest of the team. He said, but I never said like again.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and there was a moment I said, I got to shut this guy out of this right now.
Yeah.
And, even if it hurts, he has to can't say that.
Well, and it's the pattern interrupt, but also you mentioned before that you could be very direct and you were known for being very direct in your feedback, which probably was the basis of the lesson you learned in the early days at
Oh,
Procter and
yeah,
Gamble. But
absolutely.
but there's two ways to do that. One is you're very direct, but you don't care, so you're almost disassociated from the person. Or other way, you're very direct because you genuinely care about that particular person, and there's a big difference.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. Yeah. Or, we can talk about the book, but I call a generous leader someone who gives of themselves freely without expectation of direct personal benefit to ensure others grow and develop and thrive at their full potential. Now, the benefit of that is if they're thriving at their full potential, of course you benefit, right?
Totally.
Because your team's humming. Now, if they think you're doing it just so you benefit, they say, hey, wait a minute here, buddy. So, and on the feedback, the thing I'd say is you still have to spend time with your team thinking about, okay, what does this person need to develop? What are they good at? I mean, it's not just everything in the moment. You have to be thinking. And so then when you have opportunities to give them feedback and help them figure out how to leverage their strength, the more clearly you do that, the better off you are.
100%. 100%. So I wanted to ask you then, in terms of I'm always intrigued at book titles, right? And and we've just spent some time saying how you're very direct, but you've cared about your people, and you've actually written a book that has a title in it, The Generous Leader. Now, we're going to talk about the evolving, and I'd love to leverage off your experience and how you've seen leadership evolve over your journey. But can you just talk a little bit about the genesis of the title and the word generous? Was that very
Yeah.
specific? Was it done as a bit of a poke the bear type thing?
Well, I have to be honest with you because that's all I am. You can already tell. So I had several different titles. I even had friends at BCG and some of our marketing groups help me think of titles. Then when signed up with this publisher, Barrett Kohler, this guy I was in Vietnam on vacation,
Yeah.
and these two editors were on the phone and we agreed. And they said, by the way, I can't remember what the title at the time. So the title's terrible. So, all right, well, I don't know, I'm trying. And this guy says, wait a minute, call it The Generous Leader, 7 ways to give of yourself for everyone's gain. So GGG is seven. I said, okay, whatever and I had been told by a friend of mine at BCG who was once an editor, your editors will change a lot. 98% of what they say is right. Just take it. So
Okay.
and a lot of authors struggle with that because it's my words, but
Yes.
trained by
Yes.
BCG, everybody makes it better. So to be honest with you, he came up with it, but it was very clever. And just like you're probing, a lot of people say, well, that's a different kind of word. Oh, I did call him the next morning. So wait a minute. What if people think I'm saying I'm the generous leader? He said, you got a successful career, get used to it. So, okay. I'm like, whoa, okay, that's a little dark. But I do, it's not a bad word. I mean, you could call it servant leadership, leading with the heart. They're all out there. But it's interesting because it does catch your attention and for purpose. Someone might think for money, it has nothing to do with money because that's
Yeah.
not real. You and I want to make money, but we'd rather be, hey, told we did a hell of a job and a pat on the back. That you remember, the pay
Yeah.
raise, let till the next one. Um, but also the concept of really helping others grow is what I really believe in, and therefore generous works pretty well.
Because when you think about that title and you think about corporate, and let's be honest, BCG is a corporate
Yeah,
behemoth,
yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah.
global
Oh, yeah.
organization. And by the way, we forgot to mention you did spend 2 years in Melbourne, so you're almost an Australian by even though it was like 1990, which was a good year, good couple of years. When you think about big corporates and the word generous and leadership, they don't necessarily go together. So, love to firstly just have you reflect on your leadership journey and how you've seen leadership change and how you've had to adapt to change over your journey to still become the exceptional leader that obviously you have become. That's led you
Oh,
to
thank
deliver
you.
this book, right? So, because you mentioned a few things, and that is helping others get better, being a servant to them, caring about them, but also giving them really direct feedback. But you can only do that if you build good relationships with people.
Oh, that's part of it, right?
So, in your
Well,
career, how has leadership changed?
let me, yeah, it's interesting because I mean, other people have asked me, well, generous, is this just everything airy-fairy and unicorns and, clouds? Or is just this the kids need us to be nice and pretty soon it'll all be the way it used to be? So I don't believe that. And I think the world changed. Well, the world's changed massive times, but the BlackBerry began a change where we all of a sudden it was 24/7, 7 days a week. You couldn't go to work 9 to 5. Like remember IBM, the white shirts, blue suits. Now, IBM's an exceptional company and it's evolved many times, so it still is.
Yep.
But everyone was just the IBM man, cog in the wheel.
Yep.
Those days aren't there over, and the change started with the BlackBerry, and then went through the computer and this phone and et
Yep.
cetera. And of course, COVID put an end. I mean, you and I are doing this by Zoom quite effectively.
Yes.
I'm at my house, and I can't tell where you are, but does
In
looks
my
like you're.
house.
Yeah, it doesn't look like you're in an office. I mean, you got it all make them look like an office, but I can still see your house back there. So the thing is, now you could not completely separate your personal life from your work life. People needed to bring their human self to work. They need to see a human leader. And, I don't like to pick on Jack Welch, but the day of Neutron Jack, fire the bottom 10%, blah, blah, blah. I just don't think those work. Now, you could challenge me if you want about certain individuals in the world who might fit, but, they're technical geniuses who can get away with a lot of shit, although people
Yep.
don't tend to work for them very long, I'll tell you.
Yes.
Well, I think that began the shift where people were looking for humanity in their leader and the ability to bring their human self. And then the other thing that added to this is, which evolved is social media, and we know it tracks anxiety. Probably in your country, just like my country, you do the charts, social media going. And so people are now, and my country, depending on what they believe, they might even be more stressed. People are also stressed through it all. So now it's
Mm.
like, I'm doing my best to do my job, but there's all this stuff around me. Gosh almighty, I hope that leader cares about me and cares about us and has values I can believe in and that I can follow and shares them. So I think that's not going away because of that shift. It's not just when
Mm.
you're 34 also. I mean, sure, you have a mortgage and 2 kids, so you got to work, you can't quit as easily. But
Yep.
if you're talented, you just quit. So that's the biggest evolution where now I believe people need to see humanity in the workplace, which then leads to the type of things you and I are talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you think about things like COVID, because you mentioned you started to write the book in COVID, and a lot of the stories were related to COVID, and the fact that the I guess the working styles of people have changed and
Yeah.
probably never go back the same. It's even more important that from a leadership point of view to be more human because you've got to be more intentional with staying connected with your people because they may not necessarily be in the same location as you.
Right. No, I think not that thing, but the pandemic brought out the ability, if those that stepped up to to the leadership there, the importance of connecting was huge. And you had to do it through this machine here. So,
Mm,
so even then, how do you really connect with somebody? Are you saying words that they understand? Are you making sure the message go across, not just speaking? The need to be honest. Scott Kirby, the CEO of United, had told me, he said he's going to get on the video and tell everybody, well, I'm not sure when we're going to fly again, and the employees. And his team said, you can't say that. You're the CEO. You have to have all the answers. Well, what? You want me to tell them when we're going to, like, come on, guys. Nobody knows when planes are going to fly again. You didn't even know as you're telling me when you get to walk outside of 3 kilometers from your house
yeah.
or whatever. Australia. So, the desire to hear honesty. Now, you didn't want a leader to be lost and I don't know, and we'll do it. When you want a leader to say, I'm not sure where we're going, but we're going to go together. We're going to go like this, and you wanted the affirmation of someone's in charge, but you didn't
Mm.
want bullshit. Sorry, I should swear.
No,
You
that's right.
didn't. The most classic story of how I think authenticity and vulnerability, COVID brought it out, was a guy named Arnie Sorensen, who was the CEO of Marriott at the time. He was dying of cancer at the time, and he
Yeah.
got on the video. You can see it on YouTube or whatever, to the entire staff. It's very public. But he's bald from the chemo. He's had his time. He was just talking about, this is tough. We furloughed basically everybody. We've all taken pay cuts, executive. I'm not sure how long it's going to be, but we're going to stick together. We're going to get, and you knew, here's this man who's also fighting for his bloody life
Yeah.
and telling all of you, I'm going to do my best to have your back, but I'm
Mm.
not going to bullshit you and say it's all rosy. It
Yeah.
was very, very powerful on, the leader can bring humanity to the workplace. And COVID, I think, really enabled that.
Well, and when you look at that, people want to, and we talk a lot about levels of leadership, and I mean there's people out there like John Maxwell that talk about 5 levels of leadership. But when you look at it, leadership is a privilege, and I say to teams that I work with that just because you're a leader doesn't mean that you're any better than anybody else. And you can sit back and say, well, these people report to me, so they are my subordinates.
Yeah, right.
But they might follow you because they're told to. But what you want to get to a point of is they follow you because they choose to. So how do you become more and more human? How do you build those relationships? How do you be more vulnerable? And as you've just alluded to, you may not necessarily have all the answers, but you've got to be able to communicate a message that creates a feeling of certainty that in the mark of uncertainty in terms of an environment, my leader is certain that we're going to move together and we're going to move forward together.
Right. No, I agree with you. I just, when you said this, want them to follow you. And the other thing I've learned over the years and believe in is including. Now, I don't mean inclusion in the sense of DEI. I'm a deep believer in that, but I just mean including more than just your inner circle if you're the leader. Have meetings and invite the finance analyst who did the work, not the finance vice president who heard the work through the manager, through the director, so whatever bullshit you're going to get.
Yes.
But it's funny because I'm pretty good at that. I think about, okay, who can I bring in the room to this meeting that not normally in the room? And I also think then about where are they coming from and what can I ask them? And not something so damn hard that, because they're scared enough being in the senior room, right?
Yeah.
But to bring them into the room. And I had a colleague, a couple of people said, Joe, it's so amazing because when you bring us in, one, we're being included, but also I hear the bigger picture and I walk out of there thinking, okay, how can I do more beyond just my role? Now, talking about productivity, I don't sound like they're machines, but productivity out of a person. They're excited enough to do their job, but they're excited enough to contribute beyond by simply including them, showing respect, asking a few questions, et cetera.
It's such a powerful thing, and I've heard stories where executives have brought in people just to observe those sort of meetings, not necessarily to
Not even, yeah.
contribute, but just to give them a sense of, hey, I want you to see what actually happens in a senior executive meeting, how we talk to each other, what are some of the topics we're speaking about, and obviously there might be some commercial and confidence that you need to hang on to, but just to give them exposure to that. So, as you know what, at the end of the day, my senior leaders are human beings, right? They have issues, but sometimes companies are set up to, I guess, separate the senior executives from everybody else, and these senior executives are almost untouchable. And
Well, yeah. I'm thinking when I told you the story about IBM, I should pick on. Remember the stories about General Motors and Ford? The executives were on the whatever 49th floor, and they take the elevator down to the garage and get in their brand new car. That's a fan. They had no clue. They never bought a car. They didn't see the employees. They ate lunch. That's not very fair, but well, now with reputation anyway, that's really not someone that's going to inspire people to follow them. You said something about, it's a very side story, but about leaders are basically, they're not even leaders, the executive team. They're just human. And a friend of mine, Margaret Spellings, was in George Bush's cabinet when COVID, I mean, when 9/11 hit,
yep,
And they're sitting around there saying, okay, now we got to have new rules about flying, in my country, the 3 ounce and all this. And I don't know, you probably don't remember, but lipstick was accepted from that, exempted. And she was telling me a story later. She goes, you know what happened, Joe? We were sitting there in the room and there was two women and said, holy crap, we have to have our lipstick. What woman can? So we said, no, but lipstick, you can't put things, there's no bombs in lipstick. So that will be exempted from the 3 ounce rule and the liquid rule. So, just a couple of, that was pretty human. A couple of ladies said, I got to save my lipstick. And that's,
Absolutely.
you think, oh, major decision. It was just the cabinet kicking around. What are we going to do? Just to your point, pretty human.
Got to be human. Got to be human.
Way
So
off point, but I thought it was just
so let's talk about there's 7 ways to give of yourself to everyone's gain. So um, we don't necessarily have to go through all of them in depth because we like to make sure
do
and
this.
encourage people to get the book, of course. Um, Now, this might be asked. This question might sound like, well, you've got to choose between all your favorite grandkids, right? So
Uh,
I don't want this to sound like that. But is there one of the 7 that is your number one go-to? That is your
yeah,
the one you start with?
yes. I mean, well, it's not. I think if someone said, what should I do now? And I can't do anything else, I would say this whole idea about being curious and generous listening. And every executive I interviewed, everyone, they ask questions, they listen, and they don't just, they listen to learn. They listen to understand what is in that person's head that ain't in my head, as opposed to, oh, that's what he thinks, but I know all the answers, so he or she is wrong. They really want to learn what are you thinking that I can add to my thinking? It's just, it shows massive amount of respect, makes another person obviously feel included, be included, and you're going to you're going to learn something you don't know. I mean, in consulting, I used to tell my teams, always engage the skeptics and uncover the no's, because we're supposed to figure out how to execute something inside a company,
Yeah.
and there's always something we don't know. We're outside. I mean, yeah, we're outsiders. So you go uncover the no's, and rarely is the noologist a blocker. Maybe
The
one out of
noologist.
that's what I call it. Yeah. But there's always, oh no, that won't work. That won't work. And they're not, most of them aren't jerks trying to block you. They know something you don't know that needs
Yeah.
to be solved. If you don't ever go find them and ask them, good luck to making progress. So I think the most important thing is really that listen, ask, and listen, ask. Every single executive said that. Now, if I can cheat, the other thing goes with it, though, is this whole vulnerability or authenticity, because if you're not humble enough to think, oh, you, Darren, probably know something I don't know, and instead I think I know everything, you can't listen. It doesn't work. It's
Yeah.
impossible. So there's a little bit of humbleness, which I would call vulnerability, that comes with it. If I ask you, well, what are you thinking? Some leaders may, oh, that may show that I don't know the answer, and
Yeah.
that's not. I gotta tell you a story on that. It was maybe third year at BCG. Another to your question about how things evolved in my career. So I didn't know how to do some piece of math or something. And I thought, okay, I'll go ask the partner that I was working with, who was a senior partner.
Yeah.
It's interesting because he didn't know either. Now he could have thrown, he said, oh, he could have said, hey, I'm busy for 30 minutes, come back, and you go get the answer and look
Yeah.
like he knew it all. He said, oh, Joe, I don't know how to do that either. Let's walk down the hall and ask Philip. I mean, what a powerful message. A third year guy asking a senior person, I don't know. Let's go ask this guy. It just sent a real message to me that vulnerability of I don't know is powerful. And it's okay to say I don't know. And if he hadn't signaled that, but signaled, like I got to know it all, then I might be afraid to ever admit I don't know something. Then your teams all of a sudden get stuck. Because anyway, so
Powerful. Powerful. Because
it
then
was really special. That's lesson.
well, and when we talk about the fact that the team is and always will be a reflection of the leader, if you've got a leader that says, you know what, I don't have to be the smartest person in the room. I'm openly saying I don't know everything, right? But I am curious because I want to know what you know. I want to know what this person knows. Then you almost set without giving permission. You're almost giving permission to say, you know what, go and find out. It's all right.
Yeah.
It's not a
But
weakness to not know something.
I had another colleague. I asked him, like, when did you cross your line into being more vulnerable? And he said, well, Joe, I used to be scared to death to let my team know I didn't know the answer, which is a classic leader problem.
Yeah.
And he said, if I watch the team working and I could tell they're stuck and they're going to turn to me and ask me, before I would let them ask me, I'd leave. So I wouldn't have to answer. And he said, and then he thought, God, this is crazy because they're just staying stuck in there. I'm wasting time. So he said, one day I finally thought, okay, I will admit I don't know. And he said, I don't know either. He said, it was a stunning. The room, oh, you don't know? Oh, none of us know? So this creative energy just bursts. And 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 then they start brainstorming to your point. Well, but he, by saying, I don't know, he unlocked their blockage. Oh, it's
Mm.
okay to not know. Let's all brainstorm.
Yep.
Instead they're all stuck. It's a very powerful way to be vulnerable. That's quite simple. I don't know. It's a pretty simple 3 words to say.
Oh, it is. But I mean, how many people, whether it be senior executives, middle managers, or even people who are just first-time supervisors, feel as if I can't show vulnerability because I need to keep up appearances, probably because of what I think in my head is what's
Right.
expected.
Oh, that's yeah. I gave a talk. Someone, the CEO came and said, Joe, I don't know. That's really interesting because weren't we raised our entire younger? Don't say you don't know. Don't say you don't, like don't do what my boss did and say, I don't know either and walk down the hall. Say you pretend you do, and then, hopefully you go figure it out somewhere else.
Yeah,
Just you waste time. Everybody else stays blocked. No one thinks it's okay to,
yeah.
explore, curious.
But it
Yeah.
creates it creates a great environment where curiosity now replaces anxiety and say, you know what, if I don't know, if my boss doesn't know, if his boss doesn't know, or her boss doesn't know, then that's not bad. It just means we need to explore because that's going to
We
help
need to work
everybody.
together. Yeah. I
It's
like
just
that. Curiosity replaces anxiety because that's exactly what it is when it
yeah,
works. Because people are,
absolutely. Absolutely. Now, from a generous listening perspective, and I fully agree with the fact that what you've said there is a lot of leaders need to learn how to be better listeners and listening to learn and listening to understand rather than listening to respond, which unfortunately many do. Is
yes,
there
this is the
anything,
response.
and it happens all the time. I'm just waiting for you to stop talking so I can tell you what I think. That's not listening. Um, have you noticed, is there any specific tactics or strategies that's helped you become a better listener? Or people you've spoken to in forming the book that's helped people become better listeners?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. I think that, that's an interesting question because I think the first thing, the number one strategy is just feel comfortable asking questions, asking questions, asking questions. Even if you're so stubborn you think you know all the answers, just still ask 10 questions, start with a question. It's the easiest strategy. Now you're going to have to learn either the hard way or some way that if you don't listen, eventually it's going to bite you. I mean, it just doesn't work, I don't
Yeah,
think. I mean, I'm sure I'll pick on Elon Musk. Now, he's a genius, but I guarantee he's asking a trillion questions all the time. Now,
yeah.
he's absorbing the inference so fast that pretty soon he knows answers well above anybody else. Probably haven't met him, but I assume. But
Mm,
he's still asking. He's not just thinking, "Oh, I know it all," just because I'm sitting here dreaming it all. He's thinking, I'm taking data in faster than anyone in the world. I mean, it's just thinking. The other thing to do is watch, and if you see colleagues or people just not listening, what happens? A funny story, not an interesting story. Once the head of supply chain was presenting a steering committee meeting, and he's presenting the CEO, and at the client, he was going down a path like straight ahead there, and the CEO came in with a question that was orthogonal to his stuff. He stopped, he looked over at him, he sort of paid lip service, and then he went right back to his presentation.
yeah,
And I knew the CEO personally, he was a good friend. He literally, his eyes glazed over. He stopped listening. I
yeah.
thought, you just killed your whole career by not
Mm,
even saying, well, sir, I'm talking about A. Why are you asking me about Z? At least ask that question. And because
yes.
something you don't know, or he's curious about something, which, this says exceptional sales leader behind you. I mean, this is rule number one in sales is what is in their head. You got to know what's in their head, right? Or how the hell you going to sell them? I mean, unless what you're selling they absolutely need and there's no discussion. But that's not selling. That's just, taking a price for something. And that's what P&G drilled in me over and over. They ask questions.
Well, and you've got to, and we say it's a little bit of a cliche, but as a salesperson, you should be speaking about 20% of the time and listening 80% of the time. But interestingly, the reverse seems to be more true, although it's probably a generalization. But
No,
if
no, yeah, my CEO, Joaquin Duato, the head of J&J, I was talking to him, and he was saying how important it is to listen. He said, I hate it. I won't pick on it, but when the bankers come in here and just talk and talk and talk, they want to learn from me. Let me talk. Ask me three questions and pick it out of my brain. I mean, he's kind of like giving him the pass to drill
Yeah,
him, but a lot of
absolutely.
talking at me.
Absolutely. And I think I'm so glad you picked that as the, I guess, whether it's the foundational one or the one you went
I know,
straight to,
I had to pick
because
one. You made me pick one.
I know I did, and I was sort of hoping you're going to pick that because I mean Stephen Covey also talked a lot about being interested versus trying to be interesting. And if you think
Yes,
about as a leader, you're given a position of responsibility, you're often given a position of authority, and for some leaders, it can go to their head and they can make it all about themselves. But the great leaders, what I call the exceptional leaders, are the ones that don't let that title or the status that might come with it go to their head and they're genuinely interested in other people. And when I say interested, genuinely, they are genuinely interested in other
I
people.
think genuinely, not yeah,
Has to
right.
be. It's not lip service, right? And it's not asking questions so that I can get information to use against you. I'm asking you questions because I'm actually interested in you as a person, right? Now,
Right.
what's fascinating about that is my experience and having spoken to a lot of people around this is if you do that consistently and it's genuine, you can build some real deep loyalty within your team that people will now choose to follow you, not have
Yes.
to follow you because the organizational chart says they have to.
Yeah. No, well, obviously I agree with you. And I think, you said the different types of leader. I mean, you can be an exceptional manager, but you and I are now talking about what makes an exceptional leader, not
Mm,
just as, as with the whole package. Because you can be a
yes.
damn good manager and not be a good leader. I mean, we see many people like that.
Yeah.
And they don't get past certain levels because leadership takes a different capability. This same Joaquin said to me, he said to me when I was asking about this, Joe, because the other thing you and I both haven't said directly, but we know you have to get outcomes. I mean, in this
Yes.
world, outcomes matter. And as a leader, if you don't get an outcome, guess what happens? You're out of the job. So,
Yep.
I mean, eventually, one way or the other. So, but he said, what he said is the sooner a leader gets past himself and understands is that, and his role is to unlock all the great human capabilities and traits of their team, the sooner he or she will get to the best outcome. And that's just, same thing you're saying. And I think too often junior leaders don't understand that. Well, I shouldn't say junior, less tenured or just starting out, partly because they can do it all themselves if they have to. And
Yeah.
if you have three people and your team's failing, well, you can work all night long and get it done. But once you have maybe five people and 10 and 100 and 1,000, it doesn't work anymore. So either you
No.
figure out how to your point, get the best out of them, not be the smartest guy in the room, or you
So
don't.
so with that one, Joe, because another one of your, I guess, key principles or ways is the generous ally.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about that because success in any field, it's not just you. And no matter what anybody says, you need a team behind you, and there are others that lift you up and others that help you get to where you are, right? So it's never about you. So just talk about the importance of that because it sort of leverages what you just started to talk about there in terms of other people.
Yeah, well, and 2 points. And when I say generous ally, I really mean allyship, and I mean enabling others who may not have the same opportunity as, and I'll be political here for a minute, you and I, white guys,
Yeah,
may not have the same doors open to them. But it's interesting but it could be the same as a mentor. And I talked, I'm not a black guy, I had mentor, but I don't know. So I talked to a lot of friends, they say, Joe, what we want is what he called an action, what they call an action ally. Is it someone that creates opportunities for people to go deliver. And you don't do it for them, but you create an opportunity. If they walk through the door and fail, so be now you want to coach like we'd all coach, you
yeah.
want to mentor. But if they fail, so be it. And that's what they
Mm.
expect. They say, at least give me a shot, which is, you could also go to really also what mentorship is, right? I mean, mentors don't do it all for you. They actually put you in positions that are awkward and scary and make you nervous. But now they coached you and they trained you and they're there for you, but they're giving you an opportunity to walk through the door and deliver. And when it works, you feel damn good. If it doesn't work, so you learn. I mean, so I think but that's the main thing. And too many people think in allyship, well, you're doing it for them, or you're just, it's no, no, no. You're actually giving them opportunities. And if they fail, that's life. And I'll tell you, I stress this a lot because I had Actually, it was a podcast from Australia, and the guy said to me, "Well, this is going to be a little funny," but he said, "Well, don't." I don't know why I said Australia, but it's from that. Well, don't all you woke people, this is what he said to me, don't you just think it's equal outcomes? And I said, wait a minute, where'd you ever hear that? He said, I thought you all wanted. I said, no, I was really probably swore, but no, we want opportunities. If someone
Yep.
fails, they fail. So be it. Oh, no, no, you just want it evil for everybody, equal for everybody. I don't know how to engage with this. Oh, but this was my friends though were very clear. Give us a chance. If we fail, so be it. But give us a goddamn chance.
Well, and that's the thing, right? And I was going to ask you the backup question to that is how do you process failure and mistakes? So in your career, certainly running a large organization in North America, how did you either value or look at mistakes, failure, and was it something as a stepping stone, a lesson, or was it something that, hey, don't ever do that again?
You mean if somebody else made mistakes? Or
Yeah. Well, when you think about it from a leadership point of view, if you've got a culture that's so tightly wound that people are afraid of doing anything for fear of if they make a mistake, the ramifications will be horrendous. Because
I
how
don't
else are you going to learn?
Yeah, I don't think I ever saw anybody make a mistake so big the world's going to fall apart. You know, I mean, that would be it. So I didn't think that I'm just, let's go back to where we started, the feedback. So sure, if somebody makes a mistake, what a beautiful time to have a feedback conversation.
Totally.
And buddy, you missed this, you missed this, but backfight, you're damn good at this and this. So next time, think about those things when you're in that situation and use that. I mean, no, I don't, I think, it's funny. I don't know if mistakes or whatever, but goofing up. I can think of many times where I goofed up, but my mentor was right there, critical,
Yeah.
being damn clear about how I could do differently. But it was all about how I could learn from it. It was never about what's wrong with you. And
Mm.
if you don't make the effort to learn from it, usually then mentors turn, like I'm done with you. They'll never tell you, but the minute they aren't giving you feedback or criticizing you, not criticizing, giving you feedback is the minute you've lost your mentor.
Well, and that's the thing because that then leads to development because the development opportunity and when you think about it, success leaves clues, but also mistakes and failure leaves clues as well. And if you talk to most successful people, they say, you know what, I learned a hell of a lot more through the mistakes that I made and the challenges that I had to go through than I ever learned through the successes that I had.
Yeah,
So everything is a development opportunity.
I can't even think about learning. That's an issue because most of the learning, oh yeah, I screwed that up, but I learned this. Oh, I guess goofed that thing, but I learned that. Now, the important thing is one, you have to be humble and vulnerable to not freeze when you make those mistakes.
Mm.
And for me, I have someone said, "What's your biggest mistake?" And I said to my wife and my chief of staff, "What's my biggest mistake?" And they said, "Well, Joe, you make mistakes, you acknowledge it, and you change and move on. So you can't even process your mistakes because you don't remember them." Which
Yeah.
of course I thought hard enough, but I just, oh, that was wrong. Okay, let's go this way. And that's also, people say, "Hey, I'm going to follow that guy. He got new data and changed his mind instantly," instead
Yeah,
of,
and but that also sets an example. So people will often do more of what they see than what they're told to do. So if
yeah.
they see you making a mistake, not trying to hide it, but owning it and moving forward, they say, "Oh, it must be okay to maybe go beyond our current boundary to make a mistake because we're going to learn something from it and we'll move forward."
I think you just said another statement that's just a massive learning, which is people will follow what you do, not what you say. And my biggest learning on that was my daughter. I don't know, she was 14 or something. She did homework all the time, like 1, 2 in the morning. It was unhealthy. And where I said, Sadie, you don't have to do all this homework. You don't have to work all the time. She goes, Dad, you work all the time, and mom works all the time. So don't you dare tell me not to work all the time. Never mind. Keep on studying. I'm not going to get it because I ain't going to stop working. So I'm not going to tell you anymore to stop. So go at it, honey. Write your little note cards till 1 a.m. I'm all for you. It was really like, oh shit, how can I tell her not to work when I worked all the time?
Through the mouths of babes, hey? Through the
It
mouths
was
of
so
babes.
powerful. It was so powerful.
So with that then, the number seven principle I'd like to touch on is all about giving up the mask. And you
Yeah.
kind of touched on this a little bit in terms of vulnerability and authenticity, but in your experience in being in business for so many years, can you talk about the differences between and the impact between leaders who have this ability to be vulnerable, not have to all have all the answers. In other words, don't have to wear the mask, compared to the ones that are hanging on to the mask because they're holding on to what they believe is their archetype, their
Yeah, the
position, whatever the
persona,
case.
whatever.
Yeah,
It's interesting. I have a very good friend and colleague who um, he's very good looking. His wife's very good looking. His three kids are very good looking. He had a great client. He's smart. I go, holy shit, is there anything wrong here? And all of us just thought he was, and he also had to keep that persona. Like I was saying, everything's great. I'm living the dream. Oh, wait, you can't live the dream every day. And I remember one time he worked for me and he said, well, any feedback for me? I said, yeah, people think you don't care. Holy shit. He thought I slept. And he said, literally, I told him I was like 9 at night. He said, I couldn't sleep all night. What do you mean I don't care? I said, well, there's never anything wrong. We can't tell that you really care. It's always like everyone's trying to keep up with, and and actually the one thing was someone had just had a big sale that was important. The guy had struggled and he said, oh, that's great. Now turn it into something. Turn it into, I said, turn it into 50 million or whatever. And the guy called me. I said, oh my God, I was so proud of myself. And Henny just told me to get more. And I called Henny. I said, well, I was trying to motivate him. I said, Henny, in that moment, he just wanted a pat on the back, man. That's
yeah,
all he. So, that persona versus, the Arnie Sorensen or the guy I told you about who said, I don't know in the room. These
mm,
are simple vulnerabilities that are very, people follow that. They follow the authentic, the human stuff. You can't be lost. You can't be always wishy-washy. I'm not saying that.
mm,
But, people ask, how can you do that? I mean, it's obviously not easy if you're really trained and scared to do it, but I have few suggestions. Well, one executive told me she would always just watch in a room and watch other leaders and not to copy what they do, but if someone told a personal story, well, she'd really watch, she'd watch how others, you know, respond. And she just, oh my God, he told something personal and everybody actually warmed up to him. She'd see that. Or another friend of mine said, the thing to do, Joe, is think about a moment 10, 20, 30 years ago when you showed huge vulnerability in your mind and you stepped over the line and are you still here? How do it
mm,
worked out, And I just briefly tell a story when my mom died when I was 30. Well, actually, first was I got married at 22 and I cried through my vows. And what guy, 22-year-old guy cries through, and my wife was crystal clear. But afterwards, I was so embarrassed. Afterwards, all these people came, oh, that was so wonderful. And the love in the room was so powerful. I didn't really get it then, but those tears moved everybody. And then
yeah,
when my mom died when I was 30, and guess where I'm going to go? Three brothers are up there. I sobbed through my vows, or not my
yeah,
vows. And the minister said, well, don't worry, Joe, for tears are the fountains of love. And guess what? Again, all these people came up to me. Wow, the emotion, the love in that room. And, I didn't really process them, but there was a signal there. Shedding those tears warmed everybody else. And the white male 22-year-old supposed to be macho didn't lose. Matter of fact, I
yeah,
won. I
yeah,
didn't realize that till years of processing, but
yeah.
so that's the other thing to do is think back to a moment where you showed that kind of vulnerability and you're probably just fine. Matter of fact, people probably respected you more.
Yes,
And then,
yes.
you got to take the next step and the next step.
Because you didn't have to pretend to be somebody that you weren't, and you
Yeah,
had
that's
the courage to, I guess, express how you were feeling at that particular time. And you know what? If people think that was a sign of weakness and that's their issue, if they think it's a sign of strength, then again, that's their perspective. It's
yeah,
all
right,
good.
right. Yeah, yeah. But the easiest thing is if you're afraid to show some vulnerability, just say I don't know once or twice. It's a very easy statement to say. Say it, see what happens. Like my boss who said, I don't know either. Let's walk down the hall. I mean, it just freed me from being worried about not knowing something.
And I think it's a great example you said, as we talked about before, that people tend to do what they see rather than, necessarily what they're told to do. And if they have a one-up leader, two-up leader, or a senior executive that is prepared to say, I don't have all the answers, or they're prepared to show a human side to themselves, that can often be the catalyst that draws people in. And there's a stickiness there in relation to the connection from a cultural point of view that is hard to put a price tag on.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's quite impossible to put a price tag on.
Yeah. But it
But
has to be genuine because there are people out there that will manipulate.
yeah, no, and usually people will sniff it out in a nanosecond, right? I
Yeah,
mean, not always. No, sometimes they still have to follow the person because of whatever the power situation is at the moment.
yeah.
No, that's not just them. Everything. My brother I work at BCG. BCG is a great place, high quality people and all that. My brother once said, Joe, but you work there where everybody's really smart, pretty nice, upward feedback. He said, a lot of people aren't like this. I said, okay, but doesn't that mean they should be? So sure, I can accept that in whatever organization your bosses were jerks,
Mm,
but doesn't mean you shouldn't aspire to actually, and they shouldn't aspire to be beyond that. And
totally.
you're not happy, you complain about them. So there's the point, case in point.
Well, and we always talk about the fact that people are, whether it be individuals in a family group, in a sporting organization, or in a business, we become products of the environment. And if you're not in a good environment and you don't like the product, then change the environment. And it can start with one person, right? Change your environment.
Right. Well,
So,
yeah, someone once asked me, how hard is it to hire people? It's not hard to hire people. It's hard to retain good people, right? That's the trick in any
mm,
business, anything, or to your point, a team, whatever, and that's where it requires what we're talking about.
absolutely. And if we can be more generous leaders and more human leaders, then there's a higher probability that will increase our retention rate because people
Oh,
will
yeah.
choose to stick around because of the environment and how we as leaders make them feel in that environment, which is really important.
And the important, not in field, but also the importantly is you're helping them grow because they all, everyone can be happy. It's not just, as we said, they grow and they're successful. Because, it's
Mm.
not just, unicorns and pretty clouds. It's Yeah, no, but it's important to say that 'cause a lot of people, I think I said at the beginning of my book, if you really don't believe and care, you ain't gonna read this thing. And you're just not. But the point is this is all about driving results and inspiring your people to deliver it, at levels beyond what they thought, which drives better results.
Absolutely. And that's the thing that at the end of the day, businesses are there to drive profitability. They're not there to be uh, like an adult kindergarten or an adult preschool for people.
They might feel like that sometimes, but that's not the point.
Sometimes, but what we're saying through this is that you can still drive really high standards, exceptional standards, be really ruthless in terms of how we go about that, but ruthless in terms of uncompromising in the care we have for people because we care about them and we want them to be the best versions of themselves, to deliver the best outcomes, to get the best results. So it's not a case of this or that, it's a case of we can have both. And
Yeah.
that's what we're saying. So, Joe, phenomenal conversation. I really appreciate you coming on, and I do appreciate it, particularly if it's like 9:35 at night now for
All
you.
right, that's all right. This is a good
Um,
conversation. My energy's up.
awesome, awesome. So, for people who are listening to this, I'd love to let them know where they can get the book, but also if they want to know more about you and connect with you personally, where's the best place for them to do that?
So, of course, as always, you can get the book on Amazon. And but to connect me, two things. I do have a website, joedavis.com. It's pretty easy.
Yeah,
There's a way to, but more importantly or easily is I do look at LinkedIn message. I didn't used to, but since I wrote a book, I'm much better at it. I look at LinkedIn. If someone leaves me a message and asks to connect, I would say 99% of the time, I will give my email and then we can communicate by email and then go from there. If I think they're trying to sell me something, I can usually tell that's the 1%, I don't need that. And actually, it's funny I say that because when I was the head of BCG North America, all I got then is people wanted a job.
yeah.
So not look at those messages then, but that's the easiest way, and I will respond. I promise you.
Awesome. Awesome. I'll certainly put those in the show notes and actively encourage people to get a copy of the book. So,
Thank you.
Joe, really appreciate you jumping on, and it's been a great pleasure having you on the podcast.
Thank you. It's been a great conversation, Darren.
Enjoy the rest of your night, mate. Thank you for listening to the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast. I trust the information in this episode has been helpful in your journey towards becoming exceptional. And remember, please take the time to rate the show, subscribe to the show so other people can find it. But also, if I can help you, jump on my calendar, go to leadwithdarren.com and let's have a conversation about how I can help you along your journey to being exceptional.